On Saturday evening, there was a stone-cold classic at Windsor Park. Linfield led 1-0 thanks to a spectacular Matthew Fitzpatrick bicycle kick, but back came Coleraine in injury time, Matthew Shevlin popping up with the late equaliser. Then Linfield had two players sent off. David, it was a tremendous game.
It was an incredible watch, and particularly for those who were neutral, because it had absolutely everything, Keith, and I mean everything. I've got to say, from my perspective, that was the best Linfield performance I've seen in the league this year. For 65 minutes, I thought they were really dominant. They played some great football. They had Coleraine right by the scruff of the neck. The goal from Matthew Fitzpatrick was absolutely amazing, acrobatic, technically brilliant, and it was outstanding. And then, for whatever reason, Linfield appeared, I wouldn't say on purpose, but they took their foot off the gas, so
they ended up falling quite deep towards the end of that second half.
And certainly that was something that was most obviously not directed from the sidelines. David Healy, Ross Oliver, George McCartney were not sort of saying, just sit and hold what we have. I think maybe just with players subconsciously, they think, we've got the goal, let's hold on to that, let's not commit going forward. And inadvertently, that gave the advantage to Coleraine, who in the last 20 minutes really went at it hammer and tong. And I've got to say, Christopher Johns, 3-4 amazing saves. It was just it was tremendous. And then you had young Oliver Devlin, is it?
It is. What a superb assist. I mean, he just a little drag back. I mean, Isaac Baird and Cal McLean are kind of brushed aside. He skips through them, and then that little ball to the back post.
And even when you're saying he brushed them aside, when you look at him from a physical point of view, he's not a big giant, but technically is he brilliant? His poise, his balance, the quickness of his feet, and the fact that he had the vision to pick out Matthew Shevlin, who finished with aplomb. You sort of thought, well, certainly Coleraine deserves something out of this, because in that last 20-25 minutes of the game, as I say, Christopher Johns had to make some incredible saves. And then, inexplicably for me, Jamie Robinson, sent a couple of players off. Now, I'm going to put it on record. Jamie, is one of the finest referees, that we have, and I have written about him in the past, and I've spoke about him, whether it be on radio or television, and I've praised his ability and his game management and just his general performance. But certainly from the angle that I was viewing and he was viewing, the sending offs, I couldn't work them out. I really couldn't. And to me, while it added to the excitement, of the day, as I say, from those outside looking in, I couldn't work it out, Keith. I really couldn't, and I sort of thought that certainly one of the sendings off, I didn't even think that, there was any contact made with the player who went down. So, it's one of those that needs to be looked at again. And if I'm wrong, I'll hold my hands up, Jamie, and I'll apologise. But let me just say, I think maybe on the day there's a couple of things that if you'd looked at them from the angle I was looking at, then you maybe wouldn't have made the decisions that you did.
I mean, Ben Hall's red card, he really took one for the team there, because Joel Cooper was sprinting towards goal, and Ben, made the decision to stop that.
Yes. Well, that's. That's good defending, if in my book. And I know people are going to absolutely go mad at me here and call me a hypocrite and say, David, what are you talking about? But at the end of the day, if you're a centre back, if I was in that situation and I was left with limited options, then what would I do? And I would think of team first. And yes, Ben took one for the team.
Very much so. What does this mean for Coleraine? I mean, Ruaidhrí Higgins, he's came in at Coleraine. He's had an immediate impact. Obviously, a lot of money's been spent there, and he's brought in a lot of quality players. But he has clearly brought something to the table himself. Are you impressed by what he's achieved in the first 6 months at the showgrounds?
Keith, understandably, there is a lot being said and to be said about the amount of money that's being spent. But and that we have mentioned it many a time on this platform, that there's no direct correlation between having monies and success. It's okay to have the resources. It's great to have the resources, but it's how those resources are used. And it's about the recruitment. It's about the players that you bring in. It's about the type of people you bring in. And then it's about the performances that they give. Now, when you take the two Linfield games, Linfield were 2-0 up at Coleraine. Coleraine come back in to the game and obviously drew 2 each. And you're sort of thinking, it's a pity Linfield had to have held on to that from their perspective. But Coleraine, you've got to say what character to be coming back. And I remember in a conversation that we had, prior to the game from a Linfield perspective, I'd been quite happy to get a point, up at the showgrounds. Saturday passed maybe a little bit different, in that Linfield were in the ascendancy for so long. But the message that screamed at me was about Colerane's resilience, their desire. They'll not lie down. They don't know that they're beaten, and they keep going and going and going. And that comes from the manager. I've been impressed, with Rory in terms of how, I can't remember the game where I think it was actually the Linfield game, where he talked about his first half selection. And that was my fault. Immediately protecting the players, immediately not putting the blame, on them, standing back and saying, yep, I could have maybe picked a better side or a different formation or whatever else. So his openness, his honesty is refreshing. He doesn't live by sound bites. He says it as it is. When you look at his managerial career, first proper job probably was at Derry City. They won the FAI Cup in 2022. So he has known success. He knows what it's like to manage at a big club, and yet he didn't last too long there. And it's one of those, a prophet in his own town, so to speak, maybe not appreciated by the folk. But he has found somewhere where he's been given the license to build not just his squad, because he talked about the squad that was already there. He's been able to add to that, but also as well in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the coaching staff that he has there. He was able to bring his own team, so he's built all that he needs around himself to be successful. And I've been very impressed with how Coleraine have played thus far, but I've been even more impressed, by Rory, which is no surprise because he's an absolute gentleman. But how he conducts himself, in front of camera or on the radio.
One challenge that Higgins is going to face over the next coming months is how he handles Oliver Devlin, who made a major impact on Saturday evening with his assist and with his skill and just the energy he brought to the game. I'm sure he's going to want to feature more in the coming months, but there's a lot of hype around him. We know that there's English clubs looking at him. Jamie Glacken gave, very interesting quotes, really, really honest quotes from Jamie Glacken, where he's like, this kid is destined to play in England. We should enjoy him now while he's in the Irish League. How do you manage a situation like that as a manager, David? Because there's obviously a possibility that sort of talk can go to a young lad's head.
Well, I've got to say, you also helped with that, describing him as a young Messi in an excellent piece that you did about him. But I thought that was proportionate and reasonable.
I was drawing comparisons with the way he plays in those early clips of Messi where you see him jinking past all the Spanish.
Absolutely. I'll give you an example from my own experience and how you sort of manage things, and that was with Lee Feeney. Lee Feeney came onto the scene. We got him from Ards, we being Linfield at the time, and he was amazing. Absolutely amazing. He was this incredible footballer with unbelievable activity, or ability rather. And there was obviously that generated interest from all over the place. And it can understandably go, it's not about going to their head, it's about them. Subconsciously, it's in the back of their mind every time they go out to play. Will someone be watching me? Does my performance today, will that have an impact on where I may or may not go? I would think with Rory, with his own time across the water, he played, I think it was Coventry City, the big man was at, that he will have that understanding that, listen, you're getting all of this praise because of what you're doing on the pitch now. Understand this. You see, if you stop doing that, the praise and the interest will go away very, very quickly. And it's trying to help and support young Oliver to drown out all of the noise around him. I have no doubt the young man will keep his feet firmly on the ground. I even looked at his contribution to the Coleraine celebrations on Saturday. Very understated. So you can already see this is a young man who has a good head on him, and his feet will not leave the ground. And I think Rory will protect him. I think they will use him, as they see fit. Rory was saying it's unbelievable that he's on the bench, even given the strength that they have in depth. He will continue to be used as Coleraine. Will need him. But it wouldn't surprise me if he went sooner rather than later across the water. I would encourage him actually to not to be in any great rush.
Stay the season out rather than.
Well, we could rhyme a whole list of Irish internationals that we have had who remained here, who played out their time here, and then went across the water and have done well or are doing well. So that period here will be invaluable. For him to go across and play in academy or under 21 football, that would just be a nonsense for him. He wants to go across and make an impact. For me, I think a year in the Irish League would do him absolutely no harm. Maybe not the same comparison, but you look at Trey Hume. He had a season with ourselves at Ballymena United. Came home. He had that time with Linfield, and he was ready. There was never any doubt that he wasn't going. And so you look at young Oliver Devlin, and I would think that if he spent that length of time here, what a player he will turn into. He's already a great young man with a fantastic amount of ability. But my goodness gracious me, his part on Saturday just screams at you, and what a talent.
Coleraine, they haven't won the Irish League since 1974. If they win it this season, and it's entirely possible, what will it mean to the Coleraine support? I would imagine it'll mean the world.
I think it would mean an awful lot. I think you could find maybe statues going up and around Coleraine. They are a fantastic club. They have a very passionate support. They are typical of Northern Irish support. The folk over here, we love our football. They turn out in their numbers. I've got to say how they supported their team. Supported their team last Saturday at Windsor Park was right up there. They kept encouraging them, even when Linfield were on top, even when Linfield were the better side. The Coleraine support, to their credit, kept encouraging their own players. And in the end, they got a share of the spoils, which sent them home very, very happy. So if they were to become league champions in this first year of Henry Ross's reign, then I think they would be mightily pleased, and you may have to close Coleraine down for a fortnight.